Yeah, we've been dealing with the COVID-19 situation for well over 2 years now, and all of the executive orders that continue forward, even Governor J.B. Pritzker having his orders challenged in courts when it comes to the most recent cases here in Sangamon County. DHS not taking inmates found unfit for trial out of jail custody into state custody, so that's an issue that continues with DHS ordered to return to court again. Saying that they could possibly face another contempt of court hearing in that particular case of not taking criminals that have been found unfit for trial and keeping those criminals in local county jails. And it's happening all across the state. Meanwhile, you've got COVID-19 being an issue of study, continued research as to the impacts of the economic devastation that was wrought. It's not just the pandemic. It was also government actions limiting businesses, but also you had the ongoing issues of education. And we'll talk with a guest coming up here in just a moment about that in particular when it comes to the Department of Public Health and what exactly they're still doing with COVID-19 mitigation and what some state lawmakers are looking to address through the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. But a new study shows that migration patterns before and during the pandemic showed people continued to leave the state in droves, and they changed their destination briefly. So the Federal Reserve Bank in Chicago analyzed some data recently from the Van Lines Moving Agency, and it found that people were fleeing from Illinois for California before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, they changed their direction to go instead to Florida. And WirePoint's President Ted Dabrowski talking about this particular issue of the continued exodus from Illinois, and he says that it's obvious that there's some reasons behind why people are leaving the state.
It's also the high level of corruption and overall a lack of opportunity, because high taxes and corruption are job killers in the end.
And if this continues, Pew Charitable Trust's official says that Illinois' finances are going to continue to be challenged. Here is Jana from
because
Pew.
They take jobs, they buy goods and services, there are also more employers popping up, and it all generates more tax revenue for the state.
So let's get now into maybe some of the things that are continuing forward with the COVID-19 mitigations and talk with Jessica Hockett. She is also known as Emma Woodhouse on Twitter, but her Twitter channel has been yet suspended again. Jessica, thanks for taking time with us this morning with Springfield's Morning News on WMAY. What's the status of your Twitter account right now?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I've been, for the second time, I've been permanently suspended. The last time only lasted for 2 days, so not so permanent. But yes, I was suspended again last week over a tweet in which I posted an article from the Wall Street Journal, actually, and just a direct quote from that article, and Twitter did not like that. They said it violated their COVID-19 misinformation policy, and I've appealed, but I haven't heard from them yet. So yeah, offline right now.
So when it comes to your continued research here, people can find it at woodhouse.substack.com. And I would encourage people to go and subscribe to that, because you're doing some pretty incredible work that, quite frankly, even somebody who does reporting myself, it's tough to delve deeper into some of the issues that you are delving deeper into. And one of your most recent articles here says, letter to JCAR, the acting director of IDPH is wrong. Tell us what you found here and what's going on when it comes to the Illinois Department of Public Health and their continued COVID-19 mitigation efforts in public schools, which has really shown itself to be very much a negative impact on children trying to get a good quality education in Illinois.
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. So we are going to be starting once again a school year without a lot of clarity about the, quote, COVID rules. And it appears that IDPH is bent on not putting kids entirely back to normal. And the situation's a little complex. People can read about it on my Substack. But basically, IDPH and ISD keep misleading and making statements about what schools have the authority to do under Illinois law. And the biggest issue is really a question of whether a school can say to a kid like, hey, Jimmy Bob, you were, quote, exposed to, Johnny over here with COVID because he has COVID, and you have to stay home a certain number of days because you were exposed. And quite simply, IDPH is trying to allege that kind of thing has always been allowed just with other diseases under the Communicable Diseases Act. And that's simply not true. So a bunch of us have been really challenging these statements, especially with the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, and being very specific with the committee and saying, look, IDPH is making these statements. You need to call them out on this because the law does not say that. So to their credit, JCAR did respond in May by doing just that. I mean, they did question IDPH. Acting Director Amal Tolkars responded. People can see the written letters on my Substack, and she fibs at best. She doesn't cite the appropriate statutes. She truncates one of the statutes that she cites. She's like not saying what the whole statute is. So JCAR meets again tomorrow, and I really hope that they see this for what it is and they call it out.
Well, and this has been an issue we've talked about even as the real impacts of the stay-at-home orders and keeping kids from going to school and when they were returning to school. Just the question of how exactly somebody's rights to where they're supposed to be able to go are being limited. The local county health department really is the enforcer there. But it seemed to be more incumbent on parents to force that issue, right? Is this more of kind of, I guess, parents not knowing what exactly the process is versus just complying with whatever authority they may seem to believe that the school districts have?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That is what I'm at. And, a lot of parents, and I understand it, like wherever the school says, they're like, okay, I guess I have to do this. A lot of parents work, they don't have time to sit there and research. They sort of trust an official document or an official email, right, from the school. But I think if parents kind of go back and say, were schools ever allowed to do this before? And yes, especially at the elementary grades, you would get maybe a notification for certain diseases, right? Like or certain things like lice. Hey, a kid in your child's class has lice. Watch out for lice, right? Or flu, right? Like somebody was diagnosed in the third grade with flu. Just so you know, or we've had a few cases of it or whatever, but it was never incumbent upon other healthy kids that weren't sick to stay home, in the name of trying to slow or stop the spread. It's completely unprecedented, and kids and their parents are kind of easy to control, right? I mean, the state kind of has them by the neck, so to speak, right? Because people can't really afford for their kids not to be in school, and they don't want to rock the boat. So it's really awful to put parents in this kind of position. But fortunately, I mean, what I'm trying to do, what groups like Awake Illinois are trying to do, is really educate parents just based on the work that we've put in and what we see clearly in the law, and say, no, your school can't do this. And I have to be honest. I worked in schools for 20 years. My audience really first and foremost is superintendent and school boards. And, so those are the people that should be delving into this and looking, because they are a subset of the legislature, right? And they have the power to turn around and say, no, IDPH, we're not doing this.
We're talking with Jessica Hockett. She is also known as Emma Woodhouse on Twitter, but that is suspended right now. But you can find her work at woodhouse.substack.com. And, of course, we'll follow up with what happens with JCAR tomorrow in this ongoing issue of kids being told that, they can't go to school because of a suspected close contact to COVID-19 outside of what appears to be state statutes spelling out the process for which children or even adults are to be quarantined, and what kind of due process they actually have when such allegations are made. Jessica, you're doing pretty incredible work on your Substack, and I want to also highlight just one other thing, because we're going to talk about this next segment about gun violence. And what you've done is you've delved into some of the numbers here, and again, people can find this at woodhouse.substack.com. What have you found in as far as the amount of gun violence there's been, especially in the time that Governor J.B. Pritzker's been in office?
Oh my goodness! Well, since the J.B. Pritzker's pandemic response policies went into effect, and people can see this right on the website. But in 2020, Illinois had a 48% increase in homicides via firearms, and that went up, I think, another 10% or so in 2021. Not just the raw number, but also the crude rate for the mass stats people out there just skyrocketed. And I don't see how, and the suicide rate by firearm also went up. I don't see how people can look at these data and say, hey, this isn't related to how the governor and, of course, the mayor of Chicago have reacted to the pandemic. Even if you look at the data by week, which I've done, I mean, you can see exactly when these numbers started going up. And I don't understand. I don't have super strong positions on the gun ownership issue. It's not something I have an expertise in, but I don't know how people can say, hey, yeah, Pritzker probably has the solution to this problem that he clearly helped create, or that is associated with what he's done.
It's pretty incredible stuff. Again, woodhouse.substack.com. Jessica Hockett with us. Greatly appreciate your time. Let's talk again soon, because the work you're doing is incredible, and I would encourage people to go and subscribe to that to get those updates emailed directly whenever you do make those posts at woodhouse.substack.com. Jessica, thank you so much. All right, be safe out there.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Take care.
It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMA.